Telemachus hanged 12 women in his father's courtyard, and he did it on the same morning he got his father back. That was Ithaca, around 1200 BC, a small, rocky island in the Ionian Sea, off the west coast of what is now Greece. Nobody wanted it for the soil. Telemachus said so himself, turning down a gift of horses in Sparta, because none of our islands have much level ground, and Ithaca least of all. What the island was worth was the crown, and that crown also covered Dulichium, same, and the woodland island of Zakynthus. Marry the queen of Ithaca, and you ruled all four. For 20 years the king was missing. His name was Odysseus, and the son he left behind was Telemachus. When the fleet sailed for Troy, Telemachus was an infant at his mother's breast. He was a grown man of about 20 when the story we know finally begins, and he had never once seen his father's face. He also had no brothers. Homer makes a point of it. Arceisius fathered one son, Laertes. Laertes fathered one son, Odysseus. Odysseus fathered one son, and that son was Telemachus. 4 generations, one thread, and by the time it reached him it was being eaten alive. How many men were in his house? He counted them. 52 from Dulichium, 24 from Same, 20 from Zakynthus, 12 from Ithaca itself, plus a herald, a singer, and 2 men who did nothing but carve meat. 108 young noblemen in his dining hall every day, killing his cattle and waiting for his mother to give up and pick one of them. They were not hiding it. They did it in front of him, because he could not stop them. Listen to how he talks about his father at the start. My mother says I am his son, he says, but nobody ever really knows his own father. That is not grief. That is a young man told a story about a hero his whole life, who has begun to suspect the story is just a story. Then a stranger walked into the hall. He called himself Mentes, a Taphian chieftain and an old guest friend of the family. He was not. He was Athena, the goddess of war and practical intelligence, wearing a man's face, and she told him to do 3 things: call an assembly, put the suitors on notice in public, then go find out what happened to his father. So he called the island to assembly, something nobody had done on Ithaca in 20 years. Picture it. A man barely out of his teens stands in front of every landowner on the island, holding the speaker's staff, accusing their sons of eating his house down to the stone. He gets through it. Then he throws the staff on the ground and bursts into tears. Homer does not clean that up. The assembly does nothing. The suitors laugh and go back to dinner. Would you have gotten on a ship after that? He did. He borrowed a ship and 20 men, told nobody but his old nurse, made her swear not to tell his mother for 10 or 12 days, and sailed out at night. He went first to Pylos, on the western coast of the Peloponnese, to old Nestor, who had fought at Troy alongside his father. He nearly could not make himself speak. He admits he has never been used to holding long conversations, and is ashamed to start by questioning a man so much older. Nestor gives him nothing about Odysseus. What Nestor gives him instead is a story about Orestes, the son of Agamemnon, who came home and killed the man who murdered his father. See what a good thing it is, Nestor says, for a man to leave a son behind him. Athena had used the same comparison. Comfort. It is a job description. Then he went inland to Sparta, to Menelaus and Helen, and finally got an answer. Menelaus had wrestled it out of Proteus, the shape-shifting old man of the sea. Odysseus was alive, on an island, weeping, held by a nymph called Calypso, with no ship and no crew to bring him home, alive. Unreachable. And what use was that to a young man with 108 armed guests in his dining room? But something had changed. Nestor had said he could hardly believe his eyes, because the boy talked exactly like his father. He came home, slipped past an ambush waiting in the strait, and walked into a hut where a beggar sat by the fire. The beggar was his father, and here is where most retellings stop. The reunion is the payoff, and what follows is bloodier than audiences expect. What Telemachus does next, he does with his eyes open. He carries the spears out of the storeroom. He lies to his mother's face. He stands in the hall while 100 men insult a beggar he knows to be the king. When Penelope brings out the great bow and offers herself to whoever can string it, Telemachus tries it first. 3 times he made the wood bend. On the 4th pull he would have strung it, and his father shook his head, and he stopped. He was strong enough. Could you have put it down? Then the arrows started, and Telemachus killed. Amphinomus went for Odysseus with a drawn sword, and Telemachus put a spear through him from behind, between the shoulders, out through the chest. Then Euryades, then Amphimedon, then Leocretus, hit in the belly, the shaft clean through him. When the fight turned bad because he had left the storeroom door standing open and the suitors had gotten to the armor, he said so out loud mid-battle. The fault, father, is mine, and mine only. How many men that age say that with arrows in the air? He also stopped it twice. The singer Phemius and the herald Medon were about to be killed, and Telemachus stepped in front of them and told his father they were innocent. Medon, he says, was always good to me when I was a boy, so he could show mercy. Remember that. The old nurse Euryclea counted 50 women in the household. 12 of them, she said, had gone over to the suitors. Odysseus ordered them cut down with swords. Telemachus overruled his father. No clean death, he said, for women who poured reproaches on my head and on my mother's. He ran a ship's cable from a pillar, strung it around the dome of the courtyard, and hanged all 12 at once, their feet off the ground. They twitched a little while with their feet, Homer says, but not long. And who gave that order? The boy who days earlier could not finish a speech without crying. Then the fathers of the dead came for him. That is the last thing Homer ever shows him doing, standing in armor beside Odysseus and his grandfather Laertes, outnumbered, while the island marches on them. Laertes throws the first spear and kills the man leading it. Athena stops the war before it starts. In the fighting, Odysseus tells his son not to disgrace the family, and Telemachus answers, "You will see, father, that I bring no disgrace on your house." That is his last line in the Odyssey. He is roughly 21 years old, and Homer closes the book. So what happened to him? Here the record splits and never comes back together. Even inside the Odyssey there is a loose thread. The prophet Tiresias had told Odysseus that after the killing he would have to leave again, carry an oar inland until a stranger mistook it for a winnowing shovel, and make peace with Poseidon. The homecoming was never meant to be the end. The lost epic that carried it on was the Telegony, credited to Eugamon of Cyrene, dated to 567 BC. The poem is gone. What survives is a plot summary by the scholar Proclus, a retelling by the mythographer Apollodorus, and the reconstruction work of the Oxford scholar Martin West, who published a commentary on these lost epics in 2013. In that version, Odysseus does leave. He goes north to Thesprotia, marries a queen named Callidice, has another son, and comes back. Then a young man lands on Ithaca looking for a father he has never met, raids the herds for food, and kills the king with a spear tipped in Stingray's spine. His name was Telegonus, and Circe had raised him. Telemachus had a half-brother he had never heard of. Do you see what that makes him? The heir who finally got his father back, twice, and lost him to the son who never had one. One strand makes it worse. The scholar James Fraser gathered it from a Homeric scholiast, the Roman mythographer Hyginus, and Dictys of Crete. Odysseus had been warned by an oracle that his own son would kill him, so he sent Telemachus into exile on Cephallenia, the larger island next door. He guarded against the wrong son. What happens after the funeral is stranger still. Telegonus takes the body, and Penelope, and Telemachus back to Circe's island. Circe makes them immortal. Telegonus marries Penelope, and Telemachus marries Circe, the sorceress who had been his father's lover and his half-brother's mother. Does that sound like an ending anyone would invent on purpose? The Greeks kept it for centuries, and it is only one of the endings. Hesiod's Catalogue of Women, quoted by the Byzantine scholar Eustathius, says Telemachus married Polycaste, the youngest daughter of Nestor, and had a son called Persepolis. Polycaste is not a new character. She is the girl who bathed him at Pylos in Book 3, a scene the Oxford commentators Alfred Hubeck, Stephanie West, and J.B. Hainsworth read as Homer planting the marriage in advance. Aristotle and the historian Hellenicus said he married Nausicaa instead, the princess who found his father naked on a beach. Hyginus made his son by Circe, a boy named Latinus, making Telemachus an ancestor of Rome. The poet Lycophron and his commentator Tzetzes went furthest. Circe revives Odysseus. Telemachus marries her daughter Cassiphone, then quarrels with Circe and kills her, and Cassiphone kills him for it. 5 endings, and no way to choose between them. But notice what none of them say. Not one version leaves him in the dining hall, watching other men eat his cattle. The record cannot agree on how Telemachus died. It agrees completely on when he stopped being a boy. It was the morning the ropes went up, 12 at a time, in his father's courtyard.